Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey, I'm now offering a 3-day intensive seminar for men in San Diego, California. This seminar is going to be so powerful and transformative. My team and I will show you how to discover your full potential, help you find your path, your purpose, and uncover the warrior spirit that is within you. I literally put my heart and soul into this program. And the reason why you want this is because I will save you time and money from trying to figure all of this out on your own. There's limited spaces available for this event, so go to kfmseminar.com to learn more and reserve your ticket before it sells out. Again, that's kfmseminar.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Stephen DeSalvo, the author of the book Relationship Dynamics, which looks at how we develop and sustain healthier dynamics in relationships that last a lifetime. Stephen, happy to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me today, Andrew.
All right. And Stephen, glad to have you here. We start off every show with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that the guest has lived by. Share with us what you got and what that means to you.
Well, I guess my success quote for the day would be, live your true, authentic self. And I write about this quite a bit in my book, but it came sort of from the book and from an article I wrote recently on how do we engage in relationship as our true, authentic selves? And it started with this idea of, if I'm anyone other than who I am in relationship to anyone, then first of all, there's a premise to them that I'm someone different and I'm not being true and authentic to myself. And that person is not seeing the real me that they believe they're in relationship with. So that's sort of a lot to consume right there.
No, it's good. This is not the first time that's happened. So. Yeah. Well, we got a few. I'm going to dive more into that. So let's say someone doesn't actually like their authentic self. Like they're in a process of growth and transformation, and they're really working on themselves, and they actually don't like what they have done in the past. Like they don't want to go back to that. How would you answer that or give advice to someone who's struggling in that arena?
Yeah, the first thing I think, particularly what you talk about, and my next book will have more on this, in sort of the transitions in life, the periods of changes. But the first thing, to make a change, I find for myself, is that I must be completely accepting of where I am and who I am right now. I have to say, this is me. I accept all my failures, successes, everything. And from that point, I'm able to go forward and make a change. So you may not say it's loving yourself, but I would say it's complete acceptance of yourself, even of all the mistakes you've made in everything. You have to, at some point, in my book, there's a lot of talk, and I see this on your website a lot as well, about personal responsibility. And I just feel like there's a need to step into this authentic self and say, okay, I take personal responsibility for all that I've been, all that's made me to be who I am today. And I go forward from this place, making new changes. But until I come to that place of complete acceptance and personal responsibility for myself personally, I can't make the transition into something new and different. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So first we need to accept where we are and accept our shortcomings, accept our failures and challenges in the past. And that's actually a part of who we are. And so that is absolutely a part of the acceptance of your authentic self.
My greatest mistakes have been some of my greatest learnings. I write about this in a future part of the Evolve series, but we never know what's a blessing or we never know what's coming our direction. We judge things as good or bad. I see them as just happening, and then I've learned some great things. Other people would say, wow, that's horrible what happened to you. But actually, it was one of my great blessings or great openings to more knowledge or awareness in my own life and who I am as a person.
Yeah. I'm curious, is this something that you struggled with growing up? What leads someone to go on and write a book about relationship dynamics? And, walk us through how you got started with this work.
It's interesting. I grew up in Arkansas, and I moved out from my parents. It was a pretty frightening experience to sort of be on your own. But, at some point, they're sort of pushing you out of the nest, and the teenage ego is sort of wanting to get out of the nest. So I moved out, and I moved into a little house that was, $75 a month. And I'm meditating every day. That's where it sort of started for me, was introspection through meditation. And for some reason, I was very drawn to it. And I started transcendental meditation in high school in Arkansas. And I have continued that my whole life. But that sort of self-observation has really helped me to look at not only myself, but in relationship to this book, this first book, Relationship Dynamics. It helps me to look at my relationship to others and how my relationships have succeeded, failed, what made them work, what didn't make them work so well. And it's really brought me to this point. But I would say that the introspection of meditation is probably that beginning point of all of it. And then I often get asked the question, well, are all of your relationships great? Have they all been wonderful? And
right. I think they've all no. Exactly. That's why you wrote the book. You learned a lot.
That's why I wrote the book. Authors often write books. It's a very cathartic process for them writing the book, as well as my goal was to genuinely help other people as well with relationship information that could be very helpful.
Yeah. I wrote a book called The Dating Playbook for Men. It's a book helping single guys improve their dating lives. And I'll often get asked that question too. It's like, oh, so like every girl you talk to, they like you. I'm like, no, not at all.
Exactly.
It's like the opposite. But I've learned a lot on the journey, and I share that experience with other people to hopefully they don't have to spend as much time and pain on that journey. They can quickly and get the results faster. So on, this book, Relationship Dynamics, you're talking about building healthier relationships that can really last a lifetime. And that's really, I like that. And so what are some of these lessons inside this book that you can impart on men, and particularly for men? Like, what are some things here that are tough for men to do, or typically not accepted for men to do in society today?
Yeah, we'll just sort of go through an overview of the book, and then we'll come back to one particular element that I think can be very, very helpful. The book sort of starts with, how do we engage in relationships? What are they? What are the different types? And it starts very gently, and many people have noticed this. It starts gently, and then it builds and builds on itself to the very end. And then you realize you've sort of come through an entire process. It starts also with really the definition of love. And my feeling, Andrew, is that all relationships start with self-love. And so back to your earlier point about loving yourself, if you don't love yourself, then my feeling is you can't really love other people. You have to learn to experience that love and abundance within yourself before you can extend that outward.
Real quick on that topic, I think that's just to interrupt, I think that is such a powerful piece right there. Because if we don't love ourselves and we're looking to other people to love us, and it's something that's always lacking, like there's always a void. It's like we're always looking around, searching, and we're never going to find it. There's no one that's going to be able to fulfill it, because it's first got to come from you.
Exactly. And that's a big thing for men and I learned this for myself. You hit on just the exact point in the book about self-love, which is, You can't look for another person to fill a void within you. A dynamic relationship, particularly a romantic relationship that is going to really work, is going to be both people coming together and then sharing their abundance of love, resources, all of their life experiences together in a meaningful way that's joyful and peaceful and happy. But if one person is looking to have some big void filled within themselves, then it creates this sense of lack or a different dynamic in the relationship that has to be met instead of the actual healthy dynamic of two people really coming from a place of wholeness, which I feel brings a third whole to the picture. So just going forward, there are 10 elements of healthy relationships I cover. It goes into certainly a whole chapter on love, a chapter on intimacy, which we'll come back to, care and maintenance, the importance of commitments in our relationships, healthy boundaries, and then some of the behaviors which can be destructive to long-term relationships, which such things as drama. I realize that people talk a lot about drama, but they really don't know what drama is. And so I went into that pretty deeply in the sections, not only in identifying it, but also identifying your role and then how you get out of it. Finally, some of the destructive behaviors we can step into, conflict resolution, which I think is a very, very big topic. And then when relationships do end, what is the reason for them to end, etc. So going back to one of those, if I may, I'd like to sort of talk about intimacy and go back and share a little bit about that section in the book, because I think it's very relevant today. Because my feeling is that we're very, very distracted by many devices, social media feeds, all of these things, and we don't have that genuine connection that we seek, which is intimacy. And I go into defining intimacy and how you establish it pretty meaningfully in your relationships. And my feeling is that all relationships have an element of intimacy in them, not just romantic intimacy. So you want to learn, and I have a section on personal intimacy, because you first must learn to develop intimacy with yourself. So it is related to self-love, but it's also very different because it's about you becoming authentically in relationship with yourself.
And what does that look like? Intimacy with yourself?
Well, it stems around the idea of getting in touch. See, we often connect with our thinking mind, but we're not as in tune with the feeling side of ourselves. So to really be intimate and vulnerable, you have to understand your feelings. So the book talks about how do we connect with our genuine feelings so that, see, as I feel that as human beings, we're these experiential beings that are both feeling and thinking. But for some reason, at this point in human evolution, the thinking mind has become our primary focus. And our ability to feel a situation, we don't use the senses of our feelings as much as I feel we could. And so a lot of my work through meditation, et cetera, has been, how can I get more in touch with that feeling? So sort of segueing directly into intimacy for men. See, I write that men were taught as little boys, most men, not all men, but most men were taught that they were to be strong. They were to sort of suck it up, be a man, don't cry, don't express your feelings. And it's created some generations of some men that I feel just really need help in getting back in touch with that emotional side of themselves. So in some societies, to feel or have that experience of sharing feelings could be seen as weak or the feminine aspect of a man. Actually, I feel it's quite the other extreme. I think the real strength of a person is when they're able to be very vulnerable and honest and share not only their thoughts about something, but their emotions as well.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage and strength to be able to do that.
You got it. And I write in the book that it takes a lot of courage to be very vulnerable. And you have to, intimacy builds over time. So you have to build trust is one of the elements of intimacy. You have to build trust in relationships to get to that level where you can be more honest, more vulnerable, and experience deeper intimacy with someone. But for myself personally, it's the greatest fulfilling experience I can have is a truly intimate conversation or interaction with another human being. It's the best thing in the world. There's not anything I could eat, drink, do, any other experience that will satisfy me to the level that I will get through a deep, intimate connection.
Yeah. Is it possible to be too far into this, too far on the edge of leaning into your vulnerability, where it can come across or come off as being too soft?
Well, I think that it's, again, intimacy builds over time, and that it's people are stepping one step at a time into deeper intimacy. So I think that intimacy builds over time. So if you go too far, some things that betray intimacy are betrayal of confidential information. Or if a person, one of the things I write about in intimacy is that you must give permission. You must actually allow the person permission to step into more intimacy and to talk more deeply and connect more deeply. So if you were to get the statement, if somebody were to say to you, geez, that's too much, I don't want to hear any more about that personal issue of you or something. That statement is basically saying, you've gone too far. I'm sort of at my limit of how far we can go intimately into this conversation. You see what I'm saying? So there's a series of permissions that are granted all along the way as deeper intimacy builds in relationship.
Yeah. So let's go into that. What are some ways and some practical steps that guys can follow to deepen intimacy in all of their relationships?
Well, I think the first thing is just to really start becoming aware that they're not only their thoughts, that they're also their feelings, and that for whatever reason, societies have sort of encouraged the shutdown of men's emotions and emotional selves. But as to become a total whole being, we're a culmination of both our thinking selves and our feeling selves. And so getting back in touch with that feeling self is the first thing. And then I write about this in the book. Then it's to build a circle of really trusted friends or people that you feel, and you can literally say to them, I'm sort of working on some personal skills here to deepen my ability to communicate more effectively and more authentically with other people. So I want to just let you know that, and I want to talk to you now in the new way that I'm going. This is my new paradigm, and I'd like your feelings at the end of this. And the goal is to sort of start building a circle of people that you can sort of engage with in a deeper, intimate way, a more connected way, and that they see that you're genuinely trying to be more authentic and connect from a deeper place.
Do you feel like a lot of men are missing this?
I talk to so many men and women, and I think that a lot of men are really missing out on one of the beautiful aspects of being human. And it's sort of a societal thing of what was projected on us men, that we were to be the strong one and to not have these feelings and to not be sensitive. And I think a lot of men experience sort of self-repression of their own their own feelings and they don't get in touch with them.
So they're the ones doing it to themselves based on what has been taught or put on them by just society that we live in.
You tell a little boy enough times, be strong, be a little man, don't cry. I don't want to see any tears. I mean, parenting is hard. Parents, it's a very difficult job. But if a child hears that enough, they will internalize that and they will bring that into their adult selves as well. And my feeling is that we bring all of these things into our adult reality, in the way we approach the world, including how we feel, how we become intimate, all of it based on what we were taught as children.
And would this impact our ability to share our truth?
Boy, well, truth is such a part of intimacy. I mean, if you can't be honest with yourself then you probably can't be honest with other people. And if you can't be honest with other people, then gradually over time, they will see the disconnection of truth and honesty, and the breach of intimacy will have occurred then. So to really develop that deeper intimacy, you've got to have both the vulnerability and the honesty. They have to be working hand in hand. And then that permission has to be granted from either party. Let's share a little bit more. Can we go a little deeper?
And what have you seen happen to a man when he embraces this? So you're talking to a guy and he is not living up to this, and you work with him and he's starting to lean into this more. What happens to this man?
Well, I feel they feel a sense of freedom. I feel I feel it's like ultimate, I can be myself with this guy. I can actually talk. I can share what I'm really feeling. That's the thing that we tend to hold back our authentic selves. And they will feel freedom when they're able to experience sort of that genuine, authentic intimacy and connection with other people.
And I think women are wanting this as well from men.
Well, women, so let's go to the other side of the equation. And I'm talking in complete generalities here because this doesn't refer to every man or every woman. I've met men who are very capable of great intimate conversation and really very deep feeling people as well as women. However, women were raised under a different precedent. They were more allowed to experience their emotional sides of themselves. Most women were. And so they didn't get the don't cry, don't, be a little woman. They weren't told that. They were allowed to experience that more emotional side of themselves and sort of interact in the world. It was almost as if the female species was encouraged to allow themselves to experience the emotional quality of human nature. And the male side of the species has been sort of discouraged to really experience that. And it's the bringing those two together that really makes the totality, I feel, of the human experience and a human being, a really whole, healthy, happy, thriving human being comes from both of those. So women, back to them, yes, I feel they have more experience in this, and they do want more of this from men. They want to hear what a man is feeling. They don't need just the logical, thought through answer. They want to know emotionally. They want to connect on an emotional level. And actually, Andrew, we all want to connect on an emotional level. That's what we're looking for in a relationship.
Absolutely. And I really, when you said freedom, and I think at the core of every man and woman is like they want freedom. That's what we're all striving for in many ways, is to have more freedom in our lives. And I think when we think of freedom, immediate thought comes to financial freedom. Mm-hmm. But this brings about another aspect of that personal freedom, which is the freedom to be yourself and the freedom to embrace who you are, your authentic self, and engage in relationships that really matter. It's like we care about people, we love people, but sometimes we don't communicate with them in that way with what you're talking about, with a deeper, intimate connection.
That's right. And it's not necessarily all the time, but there are those moments. And then back to your point about freedom, my feeling is that a healthy relationship, really two people are completely setting each other free all the time.
Wow.
It's not because for myself, I want to continue to grow and learn and evolve into all that I can be in this lifetime. And that's what I'm looking for in really all of my relationships. And the relationships that have, and I know you've probably experienced these as well, that have inhibited your ability to grow.
Yes.
Told you, no, you can't do this, or put restrictions on how you were to engage with them, things of this nature. The more permission and the more free, those are the people we want to be around. I want to be around people where I'm free to be me, and I also set people free. And it's a magnetism. People, they're very attracted to being in my company for that reason, because I set you free. I don't have a lot of expectations. Relationships do come with some expectations, certainly, but they have to be fair and reasonable. And I tend to want to set fair and reasonable expectations, and then us mutually negotiate. So this brings up another big section that's very applicable, I think, right now, even in our presidential election. It's that of conflict resolution.
Right.
And just the idea, I have a whole chapter just on conflict resolution, because I feel like in any relationship, it can be the president, the people of the United States. It can be between a man and a wife. It can be between a manager and an employee, whatever. There has to be some rules of engagement for how we do conflict resolution. And this is another one of those areas that I feel really sustains relationships. Because for me, relationships often don't need to fail. What happens is a conflict was unresolved and one or both parties did not have good conflict resolution skills. So I really talk a lot about conflict resolution skills, how you develop them, how you step into them. And it's gotten a lot of, one of my opinion editorials was picked out this past week in Atlanta regarding the presidential race for this very, very topic, actually.
Right. Just pointing back to something you said earlier, the key phrase here, I think, of this entire episode was, you just brushed over it, and a healthy relationship is two people setting each other free.
You got it.
I really like that.
You got it.
And what's healthy about that is two people. It's not one person setting the other person free. It's a give and take. It's a balance there. And so if someone feels like their freedom is being stripped away from them, then they would be repelled, right? They would be forced to kind of pull back a little bit.
Yeah, it depends. It's what's happening. These are, there's no black and white. There's a lot of grays here, but it depends on what's being asked at what point in the relationship. For instance, a couple that's been together for 10 years, and then one person in the couple all of a sudden gets sick and is in a vulnerable place of needing the other person's help and assistance. Well, they may feel that a lot of their freedom has been taken away, but their love is also taking over the need to love and help and support this person during their time of need. So it's not always black and white. There's a lot of grays in there, certainly. But when I really talk about freedom, I talk about just primarily that we're all able to grow and become, some of my relationships I've grown out of. I've sort of moved on. They moved on. We went different directions. It wasn't.
How do you know when you've moved on, and when is it a good time to make that healthy split?
Yeah. Well, I have a section on really healthy boundaries. And one way is that if you're setting very healthy and fair and reasonable healthy boundaries, and the boundaries are constantly being breached or repeated conflicts occurring, crossing those boundaries, these types of things, it's not one incident. And one of my 10 elements of healthy relationships is time. I don't look at one incident and say, geez, this was really hurtful, mean, whatever. I look at everything over time and say, what does this mean in the totality of this relationship? So, in terms of how to know when to step out of a relationship, really the whole book looks at it from both angles. We could talk, for the rest of the day on all the ways to look at the sort of the dynamics, relationship dynamics of what's going well, what's not going so well, just sort of back and forth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking here now at, we were talking about the freedom that relationships that we're striving for. And then we went into taking a look at what happens when we feel like we've outgrown that relationship. Now, I want to touch on, you talked about earlier the conflict resolution and how a lot of relationships just end because there's a lack of proper conflict resolution. What are some of the mistakes that men make in conflict resolution, and how can they just be improve in that area?
Well, one of the key things, and there's 6 steps to conflict resolution, which I lay out in the book, which are really help quite a bit in this area. But one of the most important steps is that when a conflict occurs, it's usually the ego is telling us that we're right about something. And we have to step into a space at some point and say, am I 100% correct in my belief? Am I right here completely? Can I hear their side of the story and where they were coming from to know what their angle or perspective or view was on this situation so that I can see. And sometimes conflict resolution for me, it isn't even that it's the resolution I thought it would be. Sometimes I actually write this in the book that I feel that conflict resolution done right will lead to deeper intimacy in relationships. Because people, so it's actually, it could benefit the relationship. Oh, conflict resolution is, like I said, more often than not, I feel that people in relationships, because they don't have good conflict resolution skills, number one, and number two, they had failed expectations, which is a form of conflict. So they didn't manage expectations appropriately within the relationship as well. So those two things together, and the book covers these really well, but conflict resolution skills are just so needed in so many areas, I feel, of our world today to sort of bring us out of this very conflicted society, very conflicted government. We see the dichotomy in all of these things. It's me against them. It's not us. It's not we. And my goal is to work on myself and on writings that are about bringing a cohesiveness. And we're not always, I write, every relationship will have a conflict. We all have conflicts, but we don't all have the conflict resolution skills to resolve them. And therein is the problem.
And with conflict resolution, like what is a proper method for us to follow so that we can improve in this area? I see the importance. I definitely see the importance. And I think a lot of guys might be in a sort of conflict right now and would like to know what is something that they can do. What are they doing wrong in this area?
Well, I think it's a big topic that I cover in the book pretty thoroughly. I would say get the book Relationship Dynamics and read that whole chapter, because it sort of lays out how to even step into the conflict resolution process. It's a little lengthy to get into today, but for our time. But I will say one thing is remove your need to be absolutely right and be open to the fact that you may not have all the information that was the basis for your opinion, decision, or the conflict you're feeling right now. And be able to say, let me just step into this process with this person and see if I can hear another side of it or understand another angle, and to not be necessarily 100% right. That's where a lot of people get off on the wrong step, is they take their respective corners of the boxing ring, and no one's willing to give and step in and say, hey, there's a middle ground here between us. And even as intuitive as I am, I'm always amazed when a conflict comes up that my perspective of what I thought, or even what I thought the conflict was about, that's covered in the book as well, is just identifying the conflict. But I'm amazed that the other person's perspective and what they were thinking can be completely different from what I was thinking. You know, we have this language, this English language, and all of these languages, and they really just don't come close, I feel, to expressing what we're really feeling, thinking, and trying to emote at any given point in time. And conflict resolution is one of those places where, wow, you know, I get into these sometimes and I'm realizing, wow, I really thought it was about this, and they thought it was completely about this. And our conflicts weren't even lining up for what we thought was the same. But engaging in the process gave deeper understanding. It brought deeper intimacy to the relationship.
Wow. And sometimes we can go into a conflict we're going in with the wrong information. And so we're making, assumptions based off not knowing what's really going on,
that are not factual. You've got to watch your mind all the time, particularly in a relationship. I love this saying. I use this, some friends and I use this. We call it writing fiction, and it's like, I'm writing fiction. None of this was true. They're thinking this, they're just doing this, It's like, and it was me that was writing the fiction, It's like, you've got to check your assumptions and the stories you're telling yourself and validate them for truth, and that truth brings us closer to understanding another human being, certainly, and more intimately.
Yeah. And what happens if it's the other party who is making those assumptions and you're on the other end of that?
Well, this is why the book would be helpful to both. You've got to, if one person is capable of conflict resolution and the other person is not capable of stepping in, it really, and I really coach and work with people, in these types of scenarios to help them to learn the skills of conflict resolution so that they can sort of step in to conflict resolution skills. But if both parties, that's the very first step. If both parties don't even agree that a conflict has occurred, then you can't start conflict resolution skills at all. It stops right there. So that's the very first step, is that both people must be there. And again, it's a skill in relationships that I feel is missing just throughout our society.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that to the surface, just the conflict resolution aspect of that. I now want to dive into the knowledge round. I'm just going to ask you a few more questions here, Stephen. So are you ready for the knowledge round?
Sure.
I want to share with you more about the Knowledge for Men 3-day intensive seminar for men. I will help you discover yourself so you will know exactly who you are, what you want, and have the conviction to get there. To become a leader so you can achieve greatness in all aspects of your life and become the man you want to be. To unleash your inner warrior. You will be tested, challenged, and pushed beyond your limits. But together, we will push the boundaries of what's really possible in your life. Go to kfmseminar.com to reserve your space because limited seats are available at the seminar, and there are thousands of men listening to this right now. When the spots are gone, they're gone. So go to kfmseminar.com and join me now. This is your time. I'd love to serve you in building and creating a bigger life. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, first question I have for you is, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost or unsure of their purpose, Stephen?
There's several elements to this, but the main one is getting back to self-love and understanding your true values and beliefs, because self-love, your values and beliefs will guide you to the purpose and meaning that you're wanting to experience in life today.
I like that. And Stephen, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
What has held me back? Self-love. At one point, I had an alcoholic father. And when you are raised in that sort of environment, you can come away not feeling loved. You didn't get the parental love necessarily you always required as a child. So self-love was certainly a big one. And then I think just the awareness that intimacy was real, and it was something much more deeper and meaningful than I ever imagined, and that it brought so much more to my life than what I imagined I could have in a connection with another human being.
Yeah, just letting that sink in. That's, it's been the cornerstone of this whole episode, and it's really bringing more awareness to the level of our intimate relationships, both with men and women in our lives. So thank you for this. And Stephen, what would you say are 2 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey, and why?
For me, probably 2. Boy, I have so many, but I'm going to stick to that. And I would say A Course in Miracles was very, very powerful in terms of me seeing the elements of the ego. That was a very important book in my own self-discovery journey. To follow on with that one, I love Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. I felt that book sort of talked about a way or a direction we can go to look at the ego in terms of how we're interacting today with ourselves and with this planet. So my series, the Evolve series, is really about taking those concepts and then how do we break them down into pieces that we can, really grab onto. And so, for instance, relationship dynamics. The people who are reading this, reviewing this, are saying it's, something that's bringing calm and peace and happiness into their life, because they're seeing now how to engage in healthier relationships. They're seeing a mirror of what things could be and how the world could be. So we all work at, everything, including your wonderful program here today, in so many different directions. But my goal is to bring sort of spiritual concepts down to a very practical level of how do we live each day? What does it mean to be in the present moment? How does our ego affect us? Sort of like we talked about earlier with the needing to be right in conflict resolution.
Right. And now, this is more of a scenario, Stephen. So imagine you had 60 seconds with your 25-year-old self. What would you tell him to do? And what would you tell him not to do, if you can envision what 25-year-old Stephen is up to?
Yeah, I would tell them to be more true to themselves, learn the importance of intuition and how to go with your inner feeling and gut sense about people, about life, about living. I would tell that person to start investing more money now.
in what, like personal development or in your finances?
No, I love this quote. I think it was Einstein said that the greatest mystery of the universe was compound interest. And you can start saving when you're really young, and you can make a life for yourself that's sort of that financial freedom you're talking about. Definitely. So there's a lot of, in our world today, we require money, and money is a facet. So I would encourage the young me to invest wisely, which I have done in my life, I feel. And that. And then in terms of relationships, I sort of talk to them about, read this book, read Relationship Dynamics, because it'll get you further along in what you need to know to sort of look for the positive signs and look for some, unhealthy signs in relationships that you need to sort of circumvent or navigate in life.
Yeah, I like that. What would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Andrew, I think the more authentic I am and the more true I am to myself, and that has so many elements of spirituality and just all facets of living come together under that umbrella of authenticity. But the more true I can be to myself, the more at peace, the more I experience peace and happiness, I find.
And freedom.
And freedom.
Let's throw that in your philosophy.
Let's throw that in there. That was a big part. Thank you. But
isn't that what we're all looking for? Peace, happiness, and freedom. I mean, yes. Who would not want those more of those three things in their life?
Absolutely. That's what we really aspire to, is peace, happiness, and freedom. Yeah.
And at the core of that is speaking your truth and being your authentic self.
That's right. Well, you have to, because if you're being anything other than true to yourself, then I kind of feel like that's one of the big sins that can be committed, is not being true to yourself when you know better. But you have to know better. It was Maya Angelou who said, people will do better when they know better. So you have to know better first. And I couldn't agree more with her.
Yeah. I think that's, this whole podcast, your book, other books out there that you've shared and mentioned add to that, know better part.
Right. That's right. And my series is really about just raising awareness of some of these things that we sort of know about them, but we don't know, how they all fit together, maybe, or the deeper elements of all of them. And that's really my series, is to raise awareness, and so that we can take personal responsibility for ourselves and for our own personal evolution, because I think that we're capable now as a human species of our own personal evolution.
Our own personal evolution.
Yeah.
All right. I like this. This is good. And this has been a really good knowledge round episode out right there. And so, Stephen, what's exciting you now today? What's getting you out of bed in the morning these days?
A lot of writing, a lot of interviews, and
I'm sure
the wonderful relationships in my life just keep me very engaged in this world. They're very, very wonderful right now. Thank you. Yeah.
That's great. And go ahead and share with us how we can follow up with you moving forward.
Sure. My book, Relationship Dynamics, is available on Amazon, iTunes, Barnes & Noble, and in your local bookstore on request. You can see my author profile up on Amazon, certainly. And then I have a website, becomeanadult.com, where you can see some of my blogs. And there's been a lot of articles that have been released recently in the past couple of months, just related to intimacy, conflict resolution, and some good reviews of the book as well. So all of that is up through your local Google. So, yeah.
All right, guys. For all of those listening, you can check out his book, Relationship Dynamics, on Amazon, available on Kindle, paperback, I believe Audible, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, Audible too. Mm-hmm. So all formats there. It pops right up in Amazon. Just you can go to Amazon, you can search for it. But Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story, challenges, life lessons here with my men in the community on the Knowledge for Men podcast.
Yeah, Andrew, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.